Shakespearean Tales, the Comedies. The word comedy has its origin in the Greco-Latin word commedia, which indicates the notion of revelry and singing. Yet the function of a comedy ought not to be thought of as a mere form of entertainment. According to Aristotle, a comedy deals with the ridiculous. Plato had defined the ridiculous as a failure of self knowledge, evoking laughter. This failure of self knowledge is often reflected in the delineation of Shakespearean characters who endeavor to live up to an ideal of perfection which ultimately proves to be inappropriate for that character. For instance, in Twelfth Night, both Duke Orsino and Lady Olivia choose ideals, or should we say love idols, that are unsuitable for them. And before the play ends, Orsino realizes that Viola would be more compatible as a partner for him, whereas Lady Olivia does not hesitate to transfer her affections to Viola's twin brother Sebastian. Amorous courtship leading to happy marriages is a notable feature of Shakespeare's comedies, which are therefore termed as romantic comedies. The settings employed in these romantic comedies are enchanting, such as the idyllic forest of Arden in the play As You Like It, or the mysterious island of Illyria in Twelfth Night. These romantic comedies bear a stamp of the dramas of Robert Greene and John Lyly. In his comedies, Shakespeare has deftly made use of the long standing comic tradition involving mistaken identities and disguise, giving rise to baffling comical situations. In the tale of The Comedy of Errors, which is based on a farcical comedy by Plautus, Shakespeare heightens the chaotic confusion and fun by creating two sets of twins. However, despite the portrayal of a topsy turvy life in the world of Shakespearean comedies, all complications and misunderstandings are finally resolved at the end, and the characters who had been affected by self delusion are brought to a state of self realization. The dramatist affords scope for repentance and forgiveness too. For instance, in As You Like It, the penitent Oliver is forgiven by his wronged brother Orlando, while Frederick the usurper makes amends and returns the dukedom to its rightful ruler, Duke Senior. In the world of Shakespeare's comedies, female characters occupy the center stage. Both Portia and Rosalind dazzle in their male disguises and win the hearts of the audience with their self confident pose and bold utterances. Not much is known about William Shakespeare's life except that he was born to a glove maker at a place called Stratford upon Avon in 1564, received schooling at a grammar school where he learned English, Latin, and Greek, became a school dropout when his father's financial condition declined, got married to a lady named Anne Hathaway, who was 8 years senior to him, and became a young father of three children named Hamnet, Susanna, and Judith. Unfortunately, the boy Hamnet died at a very young age after contracting bubonic plague, a deadly disease that struck England repeatedly during Shakespeare's time, causing the frequent shutting down of London's theatres. However, Despite the uncertainty that prevailed in the world of theatre, Shakespeare took the stage by storm when his plays began to be performed, and Queen Elizabeth I became his admiring patron. It has often been debated and conjectured by some Shakespearean critics whether all the dramas claimed to have been authored by William Shakespeare were actually penned by him or by someone else. Names of Christopher Marlowe, Francis Bacon, and even Edward de Vere, Earl of Oxford, had cropped up as probable contenders for the authorship of some plays attributed to Shakespeare. But whatever the truth be, it is an undeniable fact that a playwright named Shakespeare did exist between 1564 and 1616, who perhaps began his career as an actor in a troupe of travelling actors and later set up his own acting company called the Lord Chamberlain's Men during the reign of Queen Elizabeth I. The company later came to be known as the King's Men when King James I ascended the throne and became the company's patron. Most of Shakespeare's plays were staged at the Globe, which was often referred to as a theatre that had been built by the actors for the actors. The Globe was polygonal in shape with three galleries and an open yard or pit, which was used for the groundlings to stand and watch the entire play. Usually, plays used to be performed in the afternoon. There was little of scenery, but costumes were elaborate, and female roles had to be performed by male actors. As there was hardly any scenery, the playwright had to resort to verbal imagery, and Shakespeare happened to be a master of that. Although the plots of Shakespeare's dramas were unoriginal and borrowed from various sources, his command of magnificent verbal eloquence could make him lay his scene for action wherever he wished, in a forest, on an island, on a hillside, or within a palace. In fact, the appeal of Shakespeare's plays, whether it be comedies or tragedies, lie in the display of the universal human predicament and human feelings, mirroring the varied emotions of pleasure and pain that makes up life. Thanks to the endeavours of two of Shakespeare's fellow actors, Henry Condell and John Hemmings, the first folio, or a printed collected edition of Shakespeare's plays, comprising 36 of his dramas, was published in the year 1623, 7 years after the death of Shakespeare. I acknowledge my indebtedness to all the renowned critics of Shakespeare whose works have aided me much in my understanding of Shakespeare and his dramas. In this context, I would like to make mention of names like Bill Bryson, Park Honan, Johann Gottfried Herder, Charlotte Potter, and Helen, whose works have helped me to understand the mind of Shakespeare. Of Shakespeare's early comedies, the Comedy of Errors is the most classically inspired comedy. The play, probably published in the year 1595, is a translation of Menechmi by Plautus. Menechmi's tale of a twin named Antipholus seeking his lost twin brother, also called Antipholus, results in a farce of mistaken identities. Shakespeare introduces another set of twins, the Dromios, as attendants of the Antipholuses to heighten the comic fun. However, he also weaves into this farcical tale certain thoughtful issues regarding marital adjustment, wifely duties, and the acquisition of self knowledge. The dramatist breathes into his characters an admirable lifelikeness and liveliness. At the outset of this quick paced drama, we come across Aegeon, the father of the twin Antipholuses. He is a merchant of Syracuse, and he arrives at the state of Ephesus, where he is arrested and asked to pay a ransom of 1,000 marks, in accordance to a law imposed on any trespassing Syracusian. He fails to do so and faces a death penalty, which is, however, relaxed when the Duke of Ephesus gets to hear old Aegeon's woeful tale. And what was the woeful tale? It was a tale of shipwreck that occurred many years ago, when the merchant got separated from his wife and an infant son. Aegeon was the father of identical twins. He was able to rescue one of the twins, who he raised along with an attendant who too had lost a twin brother in the shipwreck. When the twin named Antipholus of Syracuse, who remained with his father, attained manhood, he left the old merchant to look for his lost twin brother. His Dromio accompanied him. On hearing this tale recounted by Aegeon, the Duke of Ephesus now takes pity and grants an entire day to the merchant to find someone who would pay the ransom money for his release. But Aegeon knows no one who would help him. He has no knowledge that both his twin sons are present in Ephesus. He is also ignorant, as are the audience of the play, of the fact that his wife too now resides in Ephesus. In fact, the disclosure of Aegeon's wife being alive crops up as a huge surprise towards the end of the comedy, which abounds in improbabilities and unexpected coincidences. Antipholus of Syracuse, who arrives with his Dromio, not knowing that his father and twin brother are already there, is mistaken as Antipholus of Ephesus, and this gives rise to a series of laughter provoking complications. Antipholus of Syracuse finds himself being forcibly taken to the residence of his twin brother, where he is entertained by his brother's wife, Adriana. His own inclinations turn towards his brother's sister in law, Luciana. The latter feels alarmed at the prospect of being wooed by her own sister's husband and is convinced that her brother in law has lost all mental stability. Here is an extract from the original text of Shakespeare's Comedy of Errors, where Luciana, thinking Antipholus of Syracuse to be her brother in law, advises him to be more kind towards her sister Adriana. Act 3, Scene 2. Luciana. And may it be that you have quite forgot a husband's office? Shall Antipholus, even in the spring of love, thy love springs rot? Shall love, in building, grow so ruinous? If you did wed my sister for her wealth, then for her wealth's sake use her with more kindness. Or if you like elsewhere, do it by stealth. Muffle your false love with some show of blindness. Let not my sister read it in your eye. Be not thy tongue thy own shame's orator. Look sweet, speak fair, become disloyalty, apparel vice like virtue's harbinger. Bear a fair presence, though your heart be tainted. Teach sin the carriage of a holy saint. Be secret false. What need she be acquainted? What simple thief brags of his own attaint? 'Tis double wrong to truant with your bed, and let her read it in thy looks at bod. Well, in her speech, Luciana is actually advising her brother-in-law to put on a show of love and to pretend to be faithful to his wife. In the meantime, Antipholus of Ephesus finds himself being denied entrance to his own house. He gets enraged and spends the night at the house of a courtesan whom he promises to gift a gold chain. More confusion follows when this gold chain, which is meant for Antipholus of Ephesus, is instead handed over to a much confounded Antipholus of Syracuse by the goldsmith Angelo. The goldsmith then pursues Antipholus of Syracuse for not paying for the gold chain. Antipholus of Syracuse and his Dromio are then compelled to take refuge at a priory. In the meantime, Antipholus of Ephesus encounters worse experiences as he is taken to be a lunatic and is bound and thrown into a dark room along with his Dromio at his wife Adriana's orders. The play reaches its climax in the last act when all the principal characters gather at the priory. The abbess of the convent turns out to be the lost wife of old Aegeon and the mother of the twin Antipholuses. Finally, all conflicts are resolved. The release money of Aegeon is paid and his life is saved. The true identity of the two sets of twins gets revealed, and the entire family is happily reunited. The play, true to the nature of a comedy, has a happy ending. Now listen to two extracts being read out from the original text of Shakespeare's The Comedy of Errors, where Antipholus of Syracuse, who is mistaken to be his twin brother, gives expression to his amazement and consternation. The first portion is from Act 1, Scene 2, and the second excerpt is from Act 4, Scene 3.
They say this town is full of cozeness, as nimble jugglers that deceive the eye, dark working sorcerers that change the mind, soul-killing witches that deform the body, disguised cheaters, prating mountebanks, and many such like liberties of sin. There's not a man I meet but doth salute me as if I were their well-acquainted friend, and every one doth call me by my name. Some tender money to me, some invite me, some other give me thanks for kindnesses, some offer me commodities to buy. Even now a tailor called me in his shop and showed me silks that he had bought for me, and therewithal took measure of my body. Sure, these are but imaginary wiles, and Lapland sorcerers inhabit here.
Probably written in 1596, Shakespeare's The Merchant of Venice has a double plot structure juxtaposing an interesting tale of romantic courtship with one that almost verges on a tragic ending. The play, considered as a mature comedy of Shakespeare, can be said to be woman-centric, as it has for a heroine an exceptionally quick-witted and resourceful lady named Portia, whose presence of mind saves the merchant of Venice, Antonio, from mortal danger. Indeed, in managing to foil the villainous intentions of Shylock, the Jewish moneylender, Portia displays a mettle which at once catapults her from the rich heiress of Belmont, who must abide by her father's will, to a commendatory position of one who resolves a legal matter most ingeniously. In Act 1, Scene 2, we see Portia complaining to her lady-in-waiting Nerissa that she is weary of the world because, in accordance to her deceased father's will, she is unable to choose her husband, but instead must marry the man who selects the right one of 3 caskets, 1 gold, 1 silver, and 1 lead. Yet Portia eagerly awaits Bassanio's arrival, hoping he would successfully pass the casket test. Here is an extract from the aforesaid scene from the original text of Shakespeare.
By my troth, Nerissa, my little body is aweary of this great world.
You would be, sweet madam, if your miseries were in the same abundance as your good fortunes are. And yet, for aught I see, they are as sick that surfeit with too much as they that starve with nothing. It is no mean happiness, therefore, to be seated in the mean. Superfluity comes sooner by white hairs, but competency lives longer.
Good sentences, and well pronounced.
They would be better if well followed.
If to do were as easy as to know what were good to do, chapels had been churches, and poor men's cottages princes' palaces. It is a good divine that follows his own instructions. I can easier teach 20 what were good to be done, than be one of the 20 to follow mine own teaching. The brain may devise laws for the blood, but a hot temper leaps over a cold decree. Such a hare is madness, the youth, to skip over the meshes of good counsel, the cripple. But this reasoning is not in the fashion to choose me a husband. O me, the word choose! I may neither choose whom I would, nor refuse whom I dislike. So is the will of a living daughter curbed by the will of a dead father. Is it not hard, Nerissa, that I cannot choose one nor refuse none?
The play, The Merchant of Venice, can be said to explore and illustrate the theme of friendship and loyalty in many ways. The most poignant and obvious example is the friendship between Antonio and Bassanio. Bassanio is an ardent suitor of Portia and he needs money to woo her. So he approaches Antonio the merchant. However, Antonio's ships are all out at sea and his money is bound to those ships. He has invested in foreign ventures. So the merchant decides to borrow a sum of 3,000 ducats from Shylock, the Jewish moneylender. Now Shylock, who nurses a deep grudge against not only Antonio but all Christians, seizes the opportunity and acquiesces to give loan on one condition, that if the money cannot be repaid in time, the moneylender would be entitled to a pound of Antonio's flesh. Antonio does not hesitate to risk his life for his friend Bassanio and agrees to this bizarre condition. Regarding Shylock's role in this play, there has been much debate among Shakespearean critics and scholars over whether Shakespeare wanted to project the religious intolerance that prevailed during his times. In the very first paragraph of The Merchant of Venice, retold by Charles and Mary Lamb in their Tales from Shakespeare, Shylock has been depicted in the following manner.
Shylock the Jew lived at Venice. He was a usurer who had amassed an immense fortune by lending money at great interest to Christian merchants. Shylock, being a hard-hearted man, exacted the payment of the money he lent with such severity that he was much disliked by all good men, and particularly by Antonio, a young merchant of Venice. And Shylock as much hated Antonio because he used to lend money to people in distress and would never take any interest for the money he lent. Therefore, there was great enmity between this covetous Jew and the generous merchant Antonio. Whenever Antonio met Shylock on the Rialto or exchange, he used to reproach him with his usuries and hard dealings, which the Jew would bear with seeming patience, while he secretly meditated revenge.
In Act 3, Scene 1 of Shakespeare's The Merchant of Venice, Shylock's vindictive nature finds expression in an eloquent bitter speech where he pronounces his hatred for all those who had belittled him.
To bait fish withal. If it will feed nothing else, it will feed my revenge. He hath disgraced me, and hindered me 500,000, laughed at my losses, mocked at my gains, scorned my nation, thwarted my bargains, cooled my friends, heated mine enemies, and what's his reason? I am a Jew. Hath not a Jew eyes? Hath not a Jew hands, organs, dimensions, senses, affections, passions? Fed with the same food, hurt with the same weapons, subject to the same diseases, healed by the same means, warmed and cooled by the same winter and summer as a Christian is? If you prick us, do we not bleed? If you tickle us, do we not laugh? If you poison us, do we not die? And if you wrong us, shall we not revenge? If we are like you in the rest, we will resemble you in that. If a Jew wrong a Christian, what is his humility? Revenge. If a Christian wrong a Jew, what should his suffering be by Christian example? Why, revenge. The villainy you teach me, I will execute, and it shall go hard, but I will better the instruction.
A few Shakespearean critics have commented on the discomforting anti-Semitic element displayed in the discriminatory treatment of Shylock towards the end of the play. His daughter Jessica abandons him. His property is confiscated and he has to undergo a forcible conversion to Christianity. However, to an Elizabethan audience, all this would have been viewed as a well-justified punishment for the Jew who lent money at exorbitant rate of interest. Perhaps Shakespeare's purpose was to project the Jew as a laughable, contemptible character, a comic villain, so to speak. A section of Act 3, Scene 1, where Shylock laments like a madman after hearing from Tubal that his daughter had eloped with a Christian, but rejoices when he gets news about the misfortune faced by Antonio, has been presented in this play in a very amusing manner. Another interesting clownish character in this play is Launcelot Gobbo. He is skillful at making puns. The jestful debate that he has with his own conscience in a soliloquy when he decides to abandon Shylock's service sounds very amusing.
Certainly, my conscience will serve me to run from this Jew my master. The fiend is at mine elbow, and tempts me, saying to me, Gobbo, Launcelot Gobbo, good Launcelot, or good Gobbo, or good Launcelot Gobbo, use your legs, take the start, run away. My conscience says, No, take heed. Honest Launcelot, take heed, honest Gobbo, or as aforesaid, honest Launcelot Gobbo, do not run, scorn running with thy heels. Well, the most courageous fiend bids me back. Why, says the fiend, away, says the fiend. For the heavens, rouse up a brave mind, says the fiend, and run. Well, my conscience hanging about the neck of my heart says very wisely to me, my honest friend Launcelot, being an honest man's son, or rather an honest woman's son, for indeed my father did something smack, something grow too. He had a kind of taste. Well, my conscience says, Launcelot, budge not. Budge, says the fiend. Budge not, says my conscience. Conscience, say I. You counsel well. Fiend, say I. You counsel well. To be ruled by my conscience, I should stay with the Jew my master, who, God bless the mark, is a kind of devil. And to run away from the Jew, I should be ruled by the fiend who, saving your reverence, is the devil himself. Certainly the Jew is the very devil incarnate, and my conscience is but a kind of hard conscience to offer to counsel me to stay with the Jew. The fiend gives the more friendly counsel. I will run, fiend. My heels are at your command. I will run.
Like all other comedies of Shakespeare, the play The Merchant of Venice ends on a happy note with a successful union of three pairs of lovers, Portia and Bassanio, Jessica and Lorenzo, Nerissa and Gratiano. But the character who emerges as the most captivating is Portia, dressed as a young doctor of law, Balthazar, who in the courtroom of the trial scene cleverly turns the tables upon Shylock by conceding that the Jew would have just a pound of flesh, no more, no less, without allowing a single drop of Antonio's blood to fall. Portia's speech on the quality of mercy is perhaps one of the most famous of all the speeches to be found in Shakespeare's plays.
The quality of mercy is not strained. It droppeth as the gentle rain from heaven upon the place beneath. It is twice blessed. It blesseth him that gives, and him that takes. 'Tis mightiest in the mightiest. It becomes the throned monarch better than his crown. His sceptre shows the force of temporal power, the attribute to awe and majesty, wherein doth sit the dread and fear of kings. But mercy is above this sceptred sway. It is enthroned in the hearts of kings. It is an attribute to God himself. And earthly power doth then show likest gods, when mercy seasons justice. Therefore, Jew, though justice be thy plea, consider this, that in the course of justice none of us should see salvation. We do pray for mercy, and that same prayer doth teach us all to render the deeds of mercy. I have spoke thus much to mitigate the justice of thy plea, which if thou follow, this strict court of Venice must needs give sentence against the merchant there.
After showing her feet as a lawyer, Portia, instead of asking for a legal fee, takes from Bassanio the ring that she herself had given him, while Nerissa, dressed as a clerk, urges Gratiano to part with his ring. This allows for a display of jocular amusement for the audience towards the end of the play, where the wives rebuke their husbands for having unfaithfully parted with their rings. The play ends on a merry note, with Antonio receiving the good news that some of his merchant ships have miraculously escaped damage and have arrived at the port, while Lorenzo gets to know that he would inherit Shylock's fortune, and everyone is seen to rejoice except Shylock.